You are listening to Rocklaz Radio, and this is your host Tanmay Shah. Today we are joined in by the one and only Nik Kalyani, our own tech bubble, who, as you know, is a big art catalyst, making waves with Web3, blockchain, and art. He is he has done many things, and we'll uncover that today, which you don't know about his background in the open source technology, Web3, and AI and decentrology, so many things. And today is his birthday. Wish you a very, very happy birthday, Nick.
Thank you so much.
What is your birthday wish?
My birthday wish is for all artists around the world to have a sustainable income through their art.
Let's go. The universe is listening. All right. So we do this question later on, but as it's a special day, I would love for you to have this activity right now. So for a moment, if you could close your eyes and think of your favorite memory and describe to us in your own language.
It, it would have to be the the birth of my first daughter, holding her for the first time in my arms when she was born, because that transformed us, from a couple into a family, and from me into just a human into a dad, and that was a gratifying moment. Uh, to Yeah, so that would be my most favorite moment in my life.
Beautiful. And I'm sure this day several years back, your parents, your mom and dad might have felt the same.
Possible, yes, yes, because um, I was the youngest and I was their first boy. So
Let's go. Nick, what do you think is your biggest accomplishment?
it's a good question. I feel like one of the things that I have been able to achieve as a leader is to help people around me recognize the importance of empathy in life, not just in personal life, but in everyday situations, whether it's business, or personal. And I feel like I've spread that message a lot, and I continue to spread that message, and that to me is an important thing, because the more people I can sort of help be more empathetic, that's good. The other thing is, I really, really give try and impart to people the confidence to believe in themselves and to know that they can go well beyond what they think they can. And I know many people who I have had the pleasure and the honor of interacting with, who went on and did amazing things, and I like to think that I was there at ground floor, and I played a tiny teeny 0.0000001% role in making their success happen by inspiring them to go beyond what they could do.
I'm proudly one of them, so thank you so much for that.
So, by the
Who?
way, I just wore these glasses for effect. I'm going to take them off now because I'm
Okay.
not going to do this whole interview
Crypto goggles, yes.
with these glasses on. I just wanted to stay on brand a little bit. That's all. So here you go. All right.
Absolutely. So, who is one person that has been that catalyst for you?
Well, I think the cliche person is obviously someone that a lot of people revere. It's Steve Jobs. I've been always influenced by that. But I think on a more sort of technical level, intellectual level, and human level, it would have to be Alan Turing. who is well regarded as the father of modern computing. And just the way he lived his life and the achievements he made and how he fought against so much adversity and managed to achieve so many things, including making it possible for us to win the war. That's huge. And the world did not treat him kindly. And only now are they recognizing the injustices heaped upon him. And yeah, so I would say that in a lot of ways, I draw inspiration from Jobs. Very early on, I followed his trajectory, and the highlight of my life was in my college days when he was running Next, and I got I had written to them about how much I adored the machine, and I got back a marketing package with the form letter, but I saw that there was a tiny little pen inscription on it. So that was a highlight for me. So yeah, those are my two inspirations. But creatively, I look to some of the words of the famous poet Maya Angelou. So I think her words resonate well with me.
Nick, you love words, and that's how I believe poems. And you love puzzles. What is your favorite word?
Mm. I don't have a favorite word per se. Um, Let me think about that for a second. What word? You know what? My kids tell me that I use basically a lot. So perhaps that's my favorite word. I don't know. Basically. Basically, that's it.
Apparently so. I all right. What has been your biggest challenge and how did you overcome that?
I think by far the biggest challenge has to be the fact that when I came to this country as a student, to get my undergrad degree, I was helped here by my eldest sister. She somehow managed to get the funds together because you're required to have the whole first year funds in the bank account before you can get a visa. So she managed to do that, and I got a single entry visa. And 1 year after I was here, I came home from my work one night and to find my dad, my mom, and my other sister sitting in my living room, and they had come to tell me that my sister had been killed a month prior in an accident. And so that was a devastating blow for me because here I was, just a little over 18 years old in a foreign country and having to process this. And they had come and told me this because they knew that I had promised my sister when I left. I literally remember hugging her at the airport, and she's telling me to promise these two things. One, you'll get your degree, and two, you'll be famous. And they knew I would not be able to keep my promise because it was so hard to get a US visa. It still is so hard to get a US visa. And at that time, it was like impossibly difficult, but managed to get it. Um, and so they wanted me to keep my promise. And so they said, you know what, we'll help you a little bit, but you are on your own and you got to do this. And so um, I had to process all of that. I had to process, and they were there for barely, 3 or 4 days. And then I'm by myself again. I had to process the grieving process, for losing my beloved sister. I had to deal with, I am now here alone and I have to figure out how to fund my education by myself, more or less, you know? And that was a transformative portion of my life because, first of all, it steeled me. Since then, I have learned to really compartmentalize and deal with all kinds of grief and trauma. I compartmentalize, I can deal with it very well because I've practiced that, you know. And then I started thinking how to approach this, and I realized that the first thing I had to do was to figure out how to make more money. Campus jobs paid very little; they don't pay as much as off-campus jobs. So I went and petitioned the U.S. immigration to allow me to work off campus because of special circumstances, and they approved my request. So even though I was a foreign student, I could work off campus. I did that. I went and talked to every one of my professors there and told them that, look, I'm going to show up for exams and tests, and that's it. I won't be in the class. I was a straight 4.0 GPA student. Like all my, I kicked ass on all my classes, etc. At that point, so they knew me and they were okay with that. They understood my circumstance. So what I did after that, Tanmay, is I found every opportunity I could to earn money, and I did every possible job. I did. I worked on campus in the selling computers. I worked in the middle of the night at the grocery store, baking bread, stocking shelves, etc. I did every kind of one-on-one consulting I could. I already was the editor of the campus newspaper, and so I was already drawing some income there. But on average, I would say 80 to 90 hours a week is what I worked. Uh, I had no chance of ever going to class, and I just did that so I could afford to pay to take those finals and get the credits. So my grades suffered horribly as a result. The computer science classes I was still able to kick ass, but the other ones were terrible. But anyway, long story short, it took me 5 years to get a 4 year degree. The requirement to graduate was 2.50 GPA. I had a 2.51 GPA. So I went from a really good student to the worst possible academic achievement, but I was very proud of my degree. I worked my ass off for it. And if people, kind of think about why I'm entrepreneurial, etc., while everyone else was sitting in classrooms, I was figuring out, I was doing the hustle, I was getting my sales, I was earning money, I was trying to get more money for each deal. I was balancing so many different projects in my head, more or less, because, it didn't have smartphones and all that. Then those were, so anyway, yeah, so I would say that was an important point in my life.
Your sister must be very proud of you now.
I I don't know. I hope so.
I believe so. She, the way you have been helping and impacting so many lives, it is incredible. And you have shown with your hard work these things we had never heard before, but we see you. You're always available. You're always responding to DMs and messages, and you're always awake. Somehow it looks like so you're really hardworking even now. So that's very inspiring. After the college, how did you embrace and how did you make opportunities for yourself?
Uh, yeah. So after school, I got my first job. Now, really, Tanmay, when I graduated, I had a choice. Uh, I was already really, really into journalism at the time. I was the editor in chief of a daily newspaper. I had 60 people, 60 students, on my team. I had already won an award from the Detroit Free Press, a newspaper for investigative journalism. I had gotten an award by the then President Bush. So I felt like journalism was a thing for me, but I also was very into computer science. Love to write software. I wrote the first software on campus that was a chat software that connected men and women so they could date, etc. Um, anyway, so I looked at the starting salary for journalist versus starting salary for software developer, and it was no contest. And at that point in my life, I was so broke. All I needed was just some money, because you eat cereal for every meal for a couple of weeks, and you want some money. That was my situation at that time. And so I chose the software end of it. I said I'm going to find a job there, and I got a job as a network admin for a large multinational packaging company. They made the boxes, etc., that go into cereal for General Mills and all that, the cereal boxes. So I went to this remote facility in Ohio where I was a network admin. The job was so easy. I did it in an hour, and the rest of the time was for me. But yeah, so at the facility, they had these machines that printed the cereal boxes, and it's very important that between jobs, um, they have to change the colors and all that. And so the order of jobs matters quite a bit for efficiency. And they would have people manually do it on a whiteboard, like move things around, etc. And I saw this for weeks, and I studied what they did without asking them any questions. I just studied what they did. And I'm like, yeah, this can be software. And so I wrote software, and they started using it, and they found it worked. It worked way better. It saved them a lot of time. And I think in the span of a couple months, it saved them about $5 million. So one day I come to work, and I find that the CIO of the company is there, and he had come to tell me that I can't work there anymore. And I'm like, wow, But he said, no, you're moving to headquarters in Cincinnati. We have created a job just for you. You're going to be manager for IT research and development for this company. And I was like, whoa, I'm just a kid. I don't know anything. So I moved to Cincinnati, and I was part of a team of IT managers who had been there for like 10, 15, 20 years, etc. I was just a kid. But he gave me $1 million budget. He told me I could also hire interns. So I had a team of interns. And he said, just do, clear with me what you're going to do, but do it. So I essentially got email deployed at 200 so facilities. I got them gateways to, like, what we have right now with ubiquitous email and internet was not what was there then. So I kind of when I registered the domain name, it was a two-letter domain name, jr.com, sorry, three-letter, jrc.com. And I called and spoke to the guy who typed it in, you know, and registered the domain. And I registered my domain at the same time, kalyani.com. So I talked to the guy, and he typed it in. So anyway, um, it was cool. And But I found that corporate politics was getting in the way. Other managers resented that I was just a kid, came out of nowhere and was doing this, and in subtle ways they made my life miserable. So on day number 365, I went and told my boss, I'm done here. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I left, and I promised myself I would never work for anyone ever again. And I have kept that promise to date. I have only worked for someone for 1 year.
After being working in the company and having all the systems in place, how was it starting your first venture as entrepreneur? And which
Yeah. So
which stream to go in? How did you decide all that?
yeah. So again, I'm falling back on the fact that I hustled through college to make money. And so I'm like, okay, now I have nothing. I have no job. I had a job, but I quit it. I got to figure out what to do. And for me, it seemed that consulting would be the ideal way to make money because I saw a lot of people getting really rich there. So the question is what to consult on, right? So at that time, there was a software product called Lotus Notes. It's a collaboration software, very popular, and those consultants made the most money. So I'm like, I'll be a Lotus Notes consultant. I didn't even own Lotus Notes, a copy of it, and I didn't know anything about it. But I'm like, I'm a Lotus Notes consultant. So I started pitching that. I got a few meetings, and I pitched a great solution for Toyota, and they liked it, and so I got a gig, and so then I hired a few people and started my consulting company, and That was it. After that, it was specialization in that, and it felt good.
Didn't you feel that what people would say that they'll only hire if I have a portfolio? Or how did you sort of fake it till you made it?
Well, I find that in most cases in life, um, our own mental barriers prevent us from being successful. We assume people need these things. We assume, but you have to remember that every human being is different. We are interacting with human beings. So, what if your friend told you that in order to get my first gig, I had to do X, Y, and Z for months and then? Well, they are them, and you are you. You're unique. Your environment is unique. Your situation is unique. What do you lose with just trying to hustle your way through it? You lose absolutely nothing, but you do lose a lot if you just through inaction just sit around and wait or try and create some perfect portfolio or something like that. I would encourage everyone to just try, and find out what the requirements are. First, connect with people, like build build relationships, understand what they are looking for, and then deliver what they need. So I never ever felt like I had to have any certain, even like as that firm progressed, when we did gigs, etc. I never took a meeting and said, here's our whole demo of everything we did. You always start by trying to understand what they want. And you know what? A lot of people are never heard, and they love it when you ask them questions, you listen, and you actually ask uh, probing questions and say that, look, you know, uh, I'm going to help you create the best solution for your needs. And if you are good at how you ask questions, how you make them feel, the portfolio stuff, etc., becomes irrelevant because they recognize what you're bringing to the table. Listening is a very, very important skill. And I think many people don't listen. They just want to come and talk about, I did this, I did this, I did this. Instead, if you took that meeting and said, look, you know, this is all about you. Just tell me what your needs are, and I will. And really, you have to let them know that you may not be the right person to solve it, but you're going to help them find the right person potentially to solve it. So yeah, I mean, my consulting firm grew to like 15 people and I sold it in 4 years. So yeah, that's the approach I always took, is just listen to customers.
And how did you decide to sell it in 4 years and then go to open source?
No, I didn't go to open source right away. So that was the height of the .com boom, and I was bored doing consulting because consulting in general is solving the same problem again and again for different domains. It's great because it challenges you a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're just creating the next website or whatever your business is, and I really understood that services business is hard to scale up. You need to create a product. And at that time, I was reading a lot of books, etc. And it was the advent of the internet as we know it, as the web. Netscape was just coming into play, and there's a lot going on then with the birth of the web as we know it. And it was a very exciting time. Google had just launched, and I remember the day I switched from Alta Vista, which was the search engine I used, to Google, and it was a transformational kind of thing. And I was completely seduced by that. And so I decided I wanted to do something product, and I had a great idea. I at that time, you know, we had a bunch of websites called portals where you would get all your news or whatever at one place. You would go do all your activities at one place. And I came up with this idea of having an embedded app in websites called a widget. And so I founded iWidgets.com and created essentially a mechanism by which you could embed applications created on one platform, my platform, on any website. So I was in Cincinnati, Ohio at the time, and there was no venture capitalist there. So I came out here west. Well, I didn't move or anything, but I came here and I managed to raise $7 million. So you know, I felt like my idea was good. Obviously, investors also believe that, but uh, you have to take that with a grain of salt. It was a very frothy time, and they were funding anything and everything. So, as long as you had a little bit of credibility and decent thing, you would get funding. So, I don't look at it as like, oh wow, my idea was amazing or something. I just look at it, well, I mean, you had to get past some barriers, right? Anyway, so I created this company. I had a great team, and we had built a product and we were starting to get customer traction, etc. And we needed to get our Series B funding. So the first round funding is Series A, um, and the bottom fell out. The market crashed, and there was no money. And so I experienced the worst time of my life after the first episode of in school, where I had to lay off everybody. I lost. Personally, I was completely and totally broke. I had extended myself well beyond my financial means in order to continue paying. And yeah, so I was a broken individual then. I was at rock bottom, not rock not Rocklaz, bottom. I had yeah, I probably had a couple of $100 to my name. And that was difficult because you create something, you build something, you work hard for it, and then you build a team, and then you have to say goodbye to all of them. That was pretty tough. But yeah, so just getting through that, and as a purely as a hobby, I DJ my friends' parties. I Bollywood VJ, actually, video. So I was doing that for a New Year's Eve's party, and I was okay, but I was also, you could tell I was a little sad. And so I met this woman who asked me like, what's going on? And I told her what had happened, etc. And I told her about my background. And she said, look, you've done it twice now. You've created nothing. I mean, something from nothing. Just do it again. And honestly, I needed someone to tell me that, you know, to get me out of my funk, if you will. And I decided, yeah, okay, cool. Let's do something. So anyway, uh, that woman is now my wife, and
Oh wow.
we we decided to get a new start. We moved from Cincinnati to Washington D.C., and we got married there. And both my daughters were born in D.C. In fact, they were both born at George Washington University Hospital. And in exactly 2 weeks, my daughter is going to go and attend George Washington University. So it's a full cycle. So
Wow.
DC is very special to me. We went there, we moved there, and I was exploring like, how do I get started again? And there was a an open source project at the very ground floor level. It was a CMS for .NET called .NET Nuke, and the team was at its very beginning. So I got really involved in that project, and the project grew quite fast. It was the fastest growing and largest open source project in the Microsoft ecosystem, and there was tremendous growth and all that. And there were other people actually making a lot of money of it, but we were not, as sort of the people who worked on the platform itself. And we reached a point, myself and sort of what we call the three other co-founders, like the core leadership team. We reached a point where we had to decide, like, what do we do with this? And at that time, open source in Microsoft was unheard of. Microsoft was a very different company then, and it was so uh, well, we decided we are going to try going sort of the open source way, because Red Hat had gotten success at that point, and there was a few others. And since I had already done sort of this whole venture thing before, etc., I took on the mantle of CEO, and we decided we're going to raise some capital and take this open source company somewhere. It was very gratifying to be part of an amazing community of worldwide developers. At some point there were like maybe 300, 400,000 people on there, and the volunteer team was fairly large. I'd say a couple hundred people, etc. And you know, I learned a lot about how to interact with communities at scale, about how volunteers work. I learned so much about open source licensing, etc., and really, really got to understand intellectual property rights. I learned about interacting with sort of open source lawyers and all that. And words matter in licenses. Even couple words, even a single word matters. And I learned those nuances. But what happened is we tried to raise capital and we were unsuccessful. And turns out that some of the reasons were that none of us were here in Silicon Valley, because the times are different now. Earlier when I first raised, it was easier. This was a different time.
What year
And
was this?
we were also in the Microsoft ecosystem with open source, and no one believed it could work at all. So at the time, my wife was expecting our second child, and I made a commitment that after the child is born, we can move to Silicon Valley, in order to address that problem. So yeah, that happened, and I moved here with wife, 3-year old, 1 month old, and nothing, no job, nothing, no money, because I just believed that I could make it work, and so it did. I I solved all the objections the VCs, etc., had to it, and we were able to get our first round of funding. And from there, gradually the company grew, etc. And in 2017, we had an exit. It is still to date functional. There's still a worldwide community, and on that platform, it's extensible. People can build what we call modules on it. So literally hundreds and hundreds of companies have been created that build modules on it, and there's an active marketplace for it. So I understand marketplaces really well, and creating an ecosystem. It taught me how to create an ecosystem, because there were vendors that made modules, there were vendors that made skins, there were vendors that made extensions, there's vendors that did events, etc. So this whole ecosystem around this one product, and it was kind of cool. So yeah, so it taught me all those things, and it taught me how to work in a world where if you're not paying someone, they're volunteer, how do you still meet schedules? Things like that. Because when people are only going to work when they have time, you know, you can't commit to a certain release schedule and all of that. But it worked, and I was very proud of the work we did, sort of opening up the pathways for open source. I feel like we contributed in a little way for that.
Open source, for those who don't know, and let's just rewind and
Yeah.
elaborate for the artist or somebody who doesn't know open source.
Yeah. So open source software is basically software that is available, that you create an application or something like that. And normally when you go and buy something or you use cloud software, you have no idea what is going on. They could have anything in the source code. With open source software, all the source code, the code that is written to make the app do what it is available to you to look at, and it's licensed in a certain way. Some open source licenses say you can look at this, but you can't do anything with it. You can just look at it. Some of them say you can look at it, but if you change it, then you must also license your changes in the same way and make them available. The license we had was called the BSD license. Now, the equivalent of it is what's called an MIT license. It's a very free and liberal license. It says all this code is given to you without any warranty at all. All your requirement is that we have a copyright, one line. You must preserve that copyright. Otherwise, you can do whatever you want. You can sell it, you can modify it, you can do anything. It's a very liberal license. So that's open source for you. And Tanmay, I think this might be a good point for me to talk a little bit about some of my contrast experience, in open source with software versus with artists. I don't know if it's an appropriate time or not. We can do it later also. But essentially, I was talking about volunteer workforce, right? In the world of software, no one bats an eyelid at all about doing work for free, you know, about creating code for free, etc., and publishing it for free. That's why we have GitHub with thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of free repos, etc. Now entering the world of artists, don't find that much at all. Very few people are willing to do any work unless they are paid for it, which has been a huge impediment to progress. Let me tell you that, because when you want to build something, you don't want to go through the whole cycle of first raising, bootstrap capital, angel capital, whatever, and getting all of that going, and then holding people accountable, etc. As volunteers, you don't have to hold people accountable. They're stepping up to do something. Well, I mean, yeah, you do want to. If they make a commitment, you don't want to. What I'm saying is, you don't need to incentivize them, right? They're there of their own accord to help you out, and build something together. So that's the culture that made open source and software huge, and billions of dollars have been created from it. I wish, I wish I could be successful in my goal of educating artists about how, when you collaborate and you volunteer initially, you're going to make way more money than you could getting paid hourly or by project or whatever. And I'm not talking 10x or 15x. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of. I'm talking about creating wealth. Wealth is possible when you first focus on the vision
Mm.
and the market, and you collaborate and you build something of value. If you start off by thinking about how much am I going to be paid in the next hour, it's not the way
For
to
that, I
unlock
think
wealth.
we need to go one step deeper into what is open source and why do engineers so happily full contribute to that. So I would love to give you examples. We have been using softwares like Blender, which is a 3D modeling software. We have been using GIMP, or GIMP as people call it. It's a photo manipulation software. These are all open source. Anybody can download it, anybody can use it, and they're different from pirated softwares. It's not a paid version available for free. It is a free software itself where multiple people around the world, whose name also you'll never hear, who has made that or contributed to that, have keep building that and keep updating that. I mean, Blender itself, they are so frequent, the update they're so frequent, and it's beating the paid versions also. Many of the people have are using Blender for that. So Nick, what motivates these engineers or whoever contributes to the open source to just work, give their time for, I mean, why? Why does somebody want to contribute in building an open source system?
Yeah. So my first question for that would be, why not? Right? Like, why does everything have to be uh, incentivized by money? Why don't we live in a world where we do things because we want to? And that's exactly what the software world is about. Most open source projects start when an engineer or software engineer wants to, as they say, scratch their own itch. They found a gap. They need something, and they're like, well, it doesn't exist. They look, or it's crappy, and so they're like, I'm going to build a better version of it. And they build it and they put it out there. And other people say, oh, this is cool. I like it. They start using it. Other people jump in and say, I can help improve it in this way. And they contribute that way. And things start growing very, very fast. And so it starts off with a person or a couple of people thinking, I need to solve this problem because if I have it, a few other people have it. And it snowballs pretty quickly, because then once you have enough people using it, now you also have a sizable team working on it. Now you get into the realities of open source software, which you have to keep supporting it and maintaining it, etc., because you feel an obligation to them. You'll find lots of dead open source projects where they could not keep it, or maybe the person started it, but then they had a family, or or they had a sickness or something like that, and then it falls off, unless someone else picks it up. But what generally happens is a team sort of it builds up around it, and then at some point the team realizes that it is not possible to sustain working, because as it gets more successful, you spend more and more hours working on it and less time available, free time for you, right? So now you get to a point where you may have to quit your day job. And can the software sustain it? More often than not, if it's very successful, it can. So what you do is you then offer a free version, and then you offer a paid version. With the paid version, you may give some extra features. You may take away some watermark or something like that. Or in a more sophisticated enterprise open source, you might offer indemnity, so they can't be sued. You might offer technical support on a priority basis, etc. So that's called it's a freemium kind of business model. We're used to freemium in the cloud, but in open source also, that's sort of the model that exists, where you give away something, so people can still use it, and then a small number of people pay for it, and that sustains the project. In general, 2 to 5% of people pay. The rest are using it for free. That's a typical open source model, and it continues to evolve. So yeah, the motivation for people is they wanted to solve a problem, and it turns out there's a market for it. Now, if it turns out that your product, your pain point is unique, and other people didn't, in fact, have that pain, then what you end up having is something. You won't have product market fit. Product market fit is when you've got, you built a product and you found a market out there for it that is large enough to sustain income for that product, and grow that income. So if you find it, that's great. But if you don't, then those open source projects die.
This is trying to find your itch or find something missing point or in the missing link in the market, or having a problem and you're trying to solve it. It's a goal oriented thing. But when it comes to art, it's not really a goal oriented thing. It's people want to create what is flowing through them, just experiencing, just living life and creating it. So how do you think they will want to solve each other's problems? Because when an engineer in open source works, they actually have the access to tweak things and keep improving it, right? So we need to establish what is to be improved or what is the actual problem. What do you think?
Yeah. So I think in a nutshell, what you're asking me is how can you correlate what's happening in software with open source to art? And as I stated earlier, my experience in the art ecosystem is that not many people are willing to step up and volunteer. And I'm stating unequivocally that if they were, there would be a potential for great wealth for them, and they would get past this notion of a starving artist. So let's talk about that, right? So at its most fundamental level, when an artist is starting out in the Web3 ecosystem with NFTs, I hear again and again, I've never had my first sale. And I always wonder, why haven't you tried a freemium version, right? The equivalent of a freemium version. Why can't you create some great art and just say to, the collectors who are likely to collect your work, that no obligation or anything, I have created this artwork, may I please send it to you? That's it. Just do that. Why not? What have you got to lose? Nothing. So one of those collectors out of maybe 50 might say, ooh, let me look at your other work, this is great, and buy it. There you go, you have your first sale. More than likely that's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So I think more people should try that. So that's one thing. The second thing is, so many artists struggle with the same problem, whether it's with software or with marketplaces, etc. I don't see too many of them getting together and saying, how do we solve this problem? I don't think artists feel empowered to solve the problem. They are they basically freeze up thinking, It's software. I don't know how to solve this problem. It's business. I don't know how to solve this problem. But the part that's missing there is if a bunch of people get together, they toss around ideas, figure out and with great clarity express what the problem is. The next thing is to get some developers on their team and say, look, we are a team of artists here. Uh, we have this problem. Can you help us solve it? Together we can do something. Those conversations don't even happen. None. I don't know of any conversation like that has ever happened. You don't have to immediately think about how we're going to get to the solution. At least start discussing the problem with people. And and if more artists and developers collaborated like that, the same open source model would work really well. But I don't see any artists getting over this hump of I'm an artist and all I know is art. There's got to be a percentage of them out there who are like, I'm an artist but I'm also an entrepreneur. I see this problem with fellow artists have. How can we solve it? If marketplace X is crappy, what is crappy about it? Why don't we make a new marketplace that fixes that problem? There's no impediment to it, none.
I want to give a great uh, anecdote that I heard. Pixar, the company which actually started making animations, they came out with this blockbuster movie called Incredibles, and that was a show. It got many Oscars. How did they do that? They had they had they were using the first of its kind 3D animation software, which was created in house. So again, the same problem, right? Creative people who are actually using the product and creating things in movie, and there are technical people doing the technical problem. So they were brainstorming, the owners of the company, what can be done, how can we smoothen the process, how can we improve it. So they said, let's put them in one room. Because it used to take a lot of time to send memos, or this is not working this way, how to do this way, and many things you cannot type and explain, right? Like, I can show it easily with a mouse that, okay, I want to put this over here, but you cannot type it. So so when you have the engineer in the same room, he was like, it's so easy. You just have to press Shift N and tab, and that's it. You didn't know that? So I was, then the guy looks at him. How would I know?
Yeah.
So when when we have more engineers with us to brainstorm and discuss these open things, it would be great, because we have had so many spaces, but I've never had a developer come in this space and have equal number of developers who could have a conversation or brainstorm on it like that. Maybe we
Did you
can do
ever
that
invite a
sometime soon.
developer to a space?
Yeah, we never thought of it actually. This open source, that's why it was so important to talk to you about it,
Yeah.
because the perspective you are looking to it, people are not even aware about it. So you said how people make not just tens and but hundreds and millions of rupees from open source. When you first started it, how did you first look at the idea, or what convinced you to go in the open source in the first place?
So you don't go into it like that, right? You don't go into it saying I'm going to go into open source, I'm going to make a bunch of money, etc. You don't do that. You're going to fail if you do that. Your approach needs to be, what is the problem that I'm trying to solve? And it has to be a genuine problem for the market to be large enough for you to be successful with whatever solution you create. So you start off with, as I said, scratch your own itch. So for me, and the solution with that .NET Nuke is they had a CMS for Linux based environments, but they didn't have a CMS in the .NET Microsoft .NET space. So we created that. So it's just like that. You look for a gap for something that is an unsolved problem, and or a problem where the incumbent is too expensive. I'll give you a good example of what we are doing with NftyDreams in the world of AR. So currently, it's dominated by one or two companies. RTV is one of them for AR. You get some free views with it, but they are not too much, and You have to pay if you want to create something. And there's also the friction of having to download a mobile app for that. So I see that my open source brain sees that as market opportunity. I could make this a solution that removes both those impediments. I could make it so you don't have to pay that much money or any money at all, and you don't need to download an app. That's scratching an itch, right? Like there's lots of people who would say that, well, I would use AR if I didn't have those two impediments. One is an impediment for me, the creator, and one is an impediment for my customer, the viewer, And yeah, so I already started prototyping and have done enough public tests at this point where I'm confident that this DreamR product that I have in my head right now, it will have a market. I don't know how successful it will be, but it will have a market. So that's how you approach it. I know so many people use tools like Procreate, etc. Right? And there's free versions of that also. But then there's also people who need to, for example, have really good techniques to scan their analog art. Uh, I don't know what techniques exist there, or people just putting their camera in front of it, etc., and using it. Is there software that fixes the parallax and makes the thing look as good as it is? I'm not that deep into actually creating art, so I don't know all the problems. But I know artists on a daily basis have to be at some point saying, I wish this was X. When you find yourself saying that enough, there needs to be a product that someone builds, and it doesn't necessarily have to you that builds the product. You can get a couple of other artists together. You can get a developer together and say, hey, look, this is a market need I see. It's a problem. How can we solve it? You
Hmm.
start there.
We definitely need to have more interactions or accessibility to developers to actually discuss and to find out and communicate, because we just go on Google and see what is the available or what is not available, what is the extent which I can use or what I can create. So it'll be great if we have more interactions or equal number of developers who are there. Next question is, we have this in the signature questions, and I think this is a perfect time to ask this. What value do you think art adds to the world?
It's a great question. I always say that we are living in a world that's very polarized, and that social media has created this world pitting friends against each other, really, taking things that were at one time okay. It was okay to be different in your political views and still be friends. It was okay to be different religious beliefs and still be okay. It was okay to be different countries and still be friends, etc. But social media brings out the worst in us. And I think art is the counterbalance. Art is what is needed in the world to create a gentler, kinder world. And I think that is the role of art here. It has always been been something that spoke truth to power. And we are living in a world right now where the world is chaotic, and there are a lot of leaders that are stripping, democracy gradually away. And we need artists and art to communicate what we're feeling and to bring us back to freedom and to democracy. So I think art plays an important role, because without speaking words necessarily, well, I mean, if I guess with the song, etc., you do speak words, um, but art is expressive of what we are feeling in a very simple and very powerful way. And it can move people. It can move people to action and to achieve what would be insurmountable odds, in goals that are just insanely big. Art can help do that. I am a firm believer in that. Like if you look, like the photo of the little girl running in the Vietnam War, the photo of the video of the lone person standing in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square, etc. That is art. That transformed opinions. That helped shape how the world looks at a certain reality. And art has always done that, and art will continue to do that, as long as artists um, be true to themselves. Artists, when they only pander to their wallet, they take art in a direction which it was never intended to be. But artists that are true to themselves and create art for their love of art, and for their love of humanity, and for their love of expressing their emotions on a canvas or a photo, you know, they will change the world. They will make the world a better place.
Beautiful. Second question to this: with you, how do you define art? What does art mean to you?
Wow. Um, I think the if I ask that question of any artist, they will be like, it's whatever makes you think, whatever makes you feel something. But I think I would like to propose, like, at least from my perspective, art is something that communicates feelings to me uh, in in a way that touches my soul. I'll leave it at that.
It can be any medium, but something that moves you, touches your soul.
Yeah.
Beautiful. As you said, people, the way the people look at things, and also how they remember things. We remember ages and time periods from that image, and one image can express so many things. Like, for example, yesterday's recording was with a South African person, and we were talking about apartheid, and I found a perfect image for that. There are two white boys and two colored boys, black boys, who are together riding the cattles in a field. And that was such a significant moment. I said, this has to be the thumbnail for that episode. So, just one image can express so many things, as you said. It's beautiful how you're giving platforms to so many artists, and how we are going ahead with this. Coming back to open source and art, for artists, it's an emotion to create things, to observe the world, and they find pleasure in observing and recreating things in their own medium, in their own way, and they find happiness in that. What is the happiness for an engineer who's working in an open source project?
Oh, that's easy. It's people using your product. People. It's no different, Tanmay, than a chef who cooks something. What is the joy they get? Why do people spend hours slaving over some dish? It's seeing the joy of people enjoying that food, right? It's just like that for software engineers. Knowing that tens, hundreds, thousands of people are using your work in order to make their lives easier, there's no better feeling than that.
It can be said the same for artists as well. It's such a great pleasure when people comment in spaces that I really felt your art and it changed my life, or I'll always remember this, or it inspires me. It's it's the same application of what we are trying to do.
Yeah.
Now it's just a thing of how can we merge that? How, by working together, how can artists make that available worldwide, and more volunteers volunteering? It may not sell your art immediately, but like everybody coming together might build a momentum, and it can snowball into things. How do you think that can happen?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, first there has to be a mental shift. I know artists need money, I understand that. But as long as you start every discussion of a solution with, how will this make me money? You're going to fail always, 100% of the time. That's the approach and the mindset that artists have right now. So I think more artists would be more successful in making more art more prevalent in the world if you started with a growth mindset, an open mindset. That's like, I want to get more people to appreciate art. What if you start there instead of, I want to make more money or some money for myself? Just flip the equation around. If you don't care about money, start by saying, how can I get more people to appreciate art? Right now, most people's version of art is, their IKEA or Target, whatever cookie cutter frames that they get, whatever art they've decided. That's it, right? And they are they know the top 5 or 6 artworks when they go to a museum or something somewhere. But no one has, for the most part, one of one or unique art from their local artists, or you know some artist who's just beginning, their career. Their art is also amazing, right? So as long as the opening sort of gambit is, how do I make money, failure is the only outcome, I think, long term. But if you can start by thinking and saying, okay, how can I have my art make a bigger impact on the world? Ask that question. What are the ways in which you can do that? I think that will start a global art movement if more artists do that. That is going to be huge. For example, I don't see any reason why, as an artist who wants to scale up their work, to approach a bunch of companies and say, "Hey, I see you have a product that could use artwork on it, or has artwork on it. I'm willing to offer my artwork for free, provided you leave my signature, or my website name on there or something like that." Why not try that stuff? I think
That's
artists
a
are
great idea.
basically,
They might not even have thought about it.
exactly, just say that, look, you are probably paying a lot for this artwork for your phone case or something. Here's my series of 20 artworks. You can use it for free. Just make sure you put my domain name on there on the bottom. That's it. Just do that. You would become rich in no time at all. You know, this is what I'm saying, is open your mind to the possibility that you start with no money. Give up your art initially. And I know that this will get a lot of people upset, but I'm just saying that it worked for software. There is some parallel here that we can come up with, where we can scale art up and make it more accessible to more people around the world by essentially removing that barrier to entry, which is, you got to pay for it. You know, um, you can probably incentivize companies to pay for it eventually, but you got to start by taking away the first part of the equation, which is pay for it. And I know that's hard. I know I've spoken to thousands of artists. I know they need to earn a living. I get it, but it's the pathway.
That brings me to another signature question: how to make money?
Yeah. So, monetizing art has always been very, very difficult, very, very challenging. And it's almost always because we've allowed a few gatekeepers to kind of rule the world. But now it's a different world, right? With Web3, it's more open. Uh, many artists, thousands of them, were seduced by what happened in summer and, well, the latter part of 2021. And it was very frothy then, and it was very easy to just list something and boom, get a sale and make some money. But now we are back to reality, in that we still have to create a market, and we haven't solved that problem yet effectively. And so we stand here with artists struggling to make sales because we haven't developed the market for it. We haven't scaled up the audience for it. So, Tanmay, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm going to find out. The whole DAO I have created, Nifty Dreams, is its whole mission is to make it possible for artists to have a sustainable income through art. And so we're just running a bunch of experiments on how to effectively monetize art.
Let's
So
yeah. Let's again look at the engineers and their ecosystem and compare with ours. I see I mean, just to be devil's advocate, engineers and those skills are very employable. They can crack any code right anywhere, and they get jobs very easily anywhere they can apply, and it's very fluid for them to work and use their skills in any ways and earn money. But it's not the same case with artists. They take so much time to develop one particular skill, and it doesn't fit everywhere, or it's not a thing that you can suggest a website. Or suppose for hackers, you can hack a website and tell them this is a problem, go fix it. But an artist cannot tell, I don't like this design, go and change this.
yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, that what we're talking about is software has utility, right? You can use it to do something, build something, create something, etc. Whereas art is more about appreciation, about feelings, about emotions, etc. But there are domains in the world where art is a requirement. So start off with like the home and interior design, etc. There are so many opportunities for art to influence the interior of a home, whether it's the sculptures or how things are shaped, designs, etc. So we have architects that do that, but artists could play a role at the ground level in helping build art into our interiors. So they still meet regulatory requirements, etc., but it's more artful. Like I look around and I see so many opportunities for potential art to be present. I'll give you a simple example. We have light switches all over our home, and I by chance found a product where they cover the switch plate and the switch. The switches are kind of flat in the US. They're not like this more pointed like in other places. But you cover it with a piece of art. So I have irises, I have Mona Lisa, etc., all over these switch plates, etc. It's a small way to introduce art into sort of the home, right? So I think it comes down to creativity. You can have this one idea where, like, look, art can only sell if it's basically a picture, that you held up there. Or you can think of art in a more integrated sense in the world. And that's the direction I've been leaning in. Is why do we want to confine it to a rectangular square on a wall somewhere? Why can't we think of art in a more integrated way? And once you start asking that question, you start seeing opportunities around you for art to exist. I'll give you another example. That when we go to Starbucks or wherever we drink coffee, right? And you hold the cup up and you drink. Everyone else is seeing the bottom of your cup. It's a blank white circle. Wouldn't it be creative if you went and said, "Hey, look, I'm going to offer you art for that." Now, and then you can make it where, like, when you're done, you can pull it out, and you've got a little, like, round piece of art that you could, like, stick somewhere, like a sticker. Very simple idea, right? Someone could make $1 billion of it easily if it took off.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, but I'm saying you open your mind to all the ways around you where you could have art. And I'm telling you, Tanmay, there's lots and lots of surfaces around us where it is not been tried out. Why does everything have to be boring looking? Like, we've got hats and mugs, etc., which is, yes, very boring. There's so many other ways in which art could be more interesting. I'm telling you, I want to create a world where when you order a car, you check off the model, etc., but you also check off the artwork it comes pre-wrapped with. I'm fed up with seeing boring white, black, yellow, whatever, beige, blue cars. I want to see cars that reflect people's
Colorful.
personalities. Some of it might be crazy, wild, but that's good, right? If we get more diversity of thought, of expression in the world. So yeah, so I think more and more artists need to feel a little empowered to think about art outside, literally outside the rectangle, not outside the box, but how can we think about it that way?
We need engineers, and now we need additional team of architects and interior designers with us. So talking from their point of view, they might not know of places where you can just go and get artwork. Of course there are stock image sites, but not particularly for a artwork or something which could show that okay, I can use this as a something for decoration, or with our 3D models and whole environment we are creating, we could just have a website like a stock website, and which can show artworks on different places, and they can just click it and see it on everywhere and see how it looks and go and collect it. How, if you think Steve Jobs was alive at this time and he had this problem to solve, he was big into design, right? So, how do you think he would have, as you said, make even boring things beautiful? How would have Steve Jobs solved this problem?
Well, he did already, right? Like, just about everything you get from Apple has a beautiful design, and that is deliberate. That doesn't happen by accident. You make very controversial decisions, like, for example, being able to remove the battery, etc., for ease of use and for design. People complain about it, but eventually people come around. So you have to be willing to make really, really hard decisions like that. And he was a champion of that. He cared deeply about design. And I just love the fact that when you took one of the older Mac Pluses or Mac SEs apart and looked inside the cover, even that was well finished. And inside was the signature of all the people who worked on it, inside in the case. That's design. That's and his philosophy always was like when a lot of PC manufacturers at the time, the inside was hot garbage. He's like, no, we know that it's there, and so we make it good. And I have the same philosophy. Is like, I build something in a DIY project. I'm like, I know that the inside of this is like this, or the bottom of it is like this. I can't live with that. I'm going to finish it. No one will ever see it, but I feel good about it. So yeah, more people need to take that approach.
Name three people, living or dead, that you'd like to have lunch with.
I think I would love to have um, lunch with President Obama. um, there's too many of them, and that's why I'm kind of hesitating a little bit. um, I think
Whichever
I would
come to your
like
mind first.
um, I think I would like to uh, also. I'm thinking of the you said living, right? They have to be living.
Living or dead, they can even be
Oh,
from the
living
past. Yeah.
or dead. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. So I think I would love to have lunch with. It's gonna be sound really weird, but uh, Princess Diana for her humanitarian efforts. Like that was one, and Alan Turing.
Okay, let's add a fourth person. The artist you love the most, Leonardo da Vinci.
Yes, that would be great also, but I understand that he was not a very good communicator, etc. It would not be a pleasant
There,
lunch.
there's a second part to the question that I'm asking.
Yeah.
If you could ask one question to all of them, like different question to different, what question would that be?
Hmm. What is the best way, in your opinion, to make the world a better place.
Whom would you ask this?
Everybody.
No, it can be different question for different people according to whatever you want to ask them. This like imagine you're getting a chance to meet them and talk with them over a lunch
Yeah.
without any filters or anything. And one burning question that you want to ask to them, what would that be?
I think that would still be my question because that opens up a whole conversation. You know what I mean? It's a conversation starter. It's not like you answer the question and you're done. Because how they answer it gives me an opportunity to get into their mind, how they think, what they like, what they dislike, etc.
Hmm.
So
How do you?
I have to get going.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time. It was really great to have you. I have few more questions, but we'll definitely do a part two of that. And one of the technical questions was about open source, AI, and Web3 as a juncture. But you can ask, you can talk about it anytime you're free. So thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you have a great birthday. And any parting word for the audience today?
Thank you, Tanmay, so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. You're a great host, and I appreciate what you're doing. Bringing all these amazing people. I have heard some of your episodes, and you do a great job. Uh, my mantra for people is don't allow your life to be dictated by boundaries that exist only in your mind. Be able, reach beyond it. And I articulate that with the phrase dream on, dream big.
This episode is brought to you by Tanmay Shah. That's me. Best way to support this show is by sharing this with your friends and dropping a comment and review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You can become my patron and a sponsor. That's not all. You can buy Rocklaz merchandise and NFTs and much more. See all the links in description for details.
Rocklaz Radio.
Rocklaz.
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 Rocklaz Radio with Tanmay Shah.